Mouse, I have a cancer. Hello? Hey, Mouse?
Baba Booey.
Mouse. Welcome to the rice.
Hello, this is Hayden Crow. I'm going to be giving a speech on George Kusunoki Miller. You can tell from the intro video, he had a very crude humor and very raunchy, but it worked out pretty well for him. This video is going out into the interwebs. I posted on YouTube, but it's intended for my public speaking class at East Tennessee State University. Anyways, back to the topic. George Kusunoki Miller is one of my personal idols. He's a freaking awesome guy, and he has a really crazy story. And basically, he was born in Japan, and then he moved to the U.S. and started a YouTube channel where he gained a lot of popularity, and he had a really, really raunchy comedy show on his YouTube channel, and then that eventually turned into him making serious music. And I just think it's a really cool story. So anyways, like I said, he was born in Osaka, Japan, September 18th, 1992. He's actually half Japanese and half Australian. He graduated from Canadian Academy in Kobe, Japan in 2012, and he moved to the U.S. as soon as he turned 18. His first YouTube channel was Disaster Music, and it started out with some really general comedy skits. He was pretty young when he started it, because his first video was on June 19th, 2008, but it was titled Little John Falls Off a Table, and it was pretty cringy, but it was the start of something great. The first real skit that he put on there was Tempura Boys Episode 1, and that was even cringier, and it was on August 1st, 2008. And then his last video on there for a while was Never Trust a Horse. You can tell there's some pretty wacky skits by the titles. And that was in August 11, 2009. The next video he posted was was a few years later. The first one he posted was called Filthy Shit, and basically he goes on a really long and kind of disgusting rant about a really nasty shit he took one time, but he makes it pretty funny. He's pretty funny about it, and when you compare it to some of his later content, it is very reminiscent of a character he created later on known as Filthy Frank. And in the comments, in the description of the video, you can actually read that it's almost your typical, I don't know, you'll see a Facebook post that says like, oh, if this gets 1 million likes, my dad said he'll take me to Disneyland. It was like that, except he said that his friend said that if he got like 1,000 likes or something, he'd let him punch him in the balls as hard as he could. Needless to say, he got the view count, and he punched his friend in the balls. But then the very next video is the first time he refers to himself as Filthy Frank, which goes on to be one of his most famous characters on his channel. And it was called First Day of School. And that was the first time he referred to himself as Filthy Frank. And there's a lot of similarities between him and his later videos. But you could still tell if you watch him that his filth had not fully developed. Continuing off of that, he keeps making these rant videos and keeps doing that stuff. but eventually he starts making other videos. The first one being called Singing Adele, where he first conceptualized his next character, Pink Guy, where he was dressed up in a pink leotard and very terribly sung Adele. That was it. Yeah, that was it. That was comedy for you. Yeah, he sang Adele very badly in a pink leotard, and he also kind of spazzed out the whole time. But then he started making a lot of videos with Pink Guy. He became a very iconic character for his channel, and he was just a general nuisance around public. A few examples of some of the stuff that he did was one time he walked into a McDonald's. Keep in mind, all of this is in the Pink Guy outfit. He walked into a McDonald's, screamed at the top of his lungs, "The Dark Lord is here!" And then he rolled lemon heads on the floor, and then just kind of stood there. And then the camera got him doing that and other people's reactions. One time he had a seizure or a fake seizure in the street, and then he would scare people in elevators and alleyways, just a bunch of like random nuisance stuff. But it was pretty funny and it got a lot of attention. Another thing to note that doesn't really have a whole lot to do with his fame, particularly, but it is something that he did do. The Harlem Shake was originally invented by George Miller. We all know that was a big craze back in the 2012s. He started that with the Pink Guy character and a few of his friends that were also in masks and costumes. But after all of this started, after he had Pink Guy and Filthy Frank, he was still doing all these videos. He eventually developed more characters, and over time it developed a story arc and a lore, almost to say. But it was really all over the place, little pieces here and there. But he had a bunch of characters like Salamander Man, Safari Guy, Plastic Pinocchio, and even a bad guy, Dark Lord Chin Chin. And they all had their own personalities and costumes, and he even had a few characters. And also, they were all played by him. That was another cool thing. They were all played by him, and there were a few characters that he had people's help with. The most notable ones are Red Dick and Prometheus. And during this time, this was almost considered the golden age of Filthy Frank, and around this time, he also made a second channel to transfer all of that content onto. And then, soon after that, he actually released an album under Pink Guy, a comedy rap album that hit the #1 Billboard spot for a while. I think it was like 2 weeks or something. And this was like as raunchy as it gets. There's some crazy stuff. It's pretty funny, but you got to keep in mind they also showed that he really had some potential as music, because it hit #1 Billboard. It was funny, but it was still good. And then within this time, he actually releases a video on YouTube called "Filthy Frank Exposes Himself." And in this video, it's the first time that he really ever breaks character. Up until now, he's been putting on a facade and he has these different characters. But you can tell for the first time he's really talking to the audience one-on-one as George, not as Filthy Frank or as Pink Guy or any of these characters. And he puts his own twist on it. He has characters, and he plays it off like they're all different people, almost like he's bipolar or something. But he has his fun, but he gets down to business, and basically he tells everyone that he was diagnosed with a brain disorder that ironically gives him stress-induced seizures, And he said that a lot of the stress was coming from running the show, and he felt really captivated by it and didn't think he could do much else with it. And eventually he actually deleted the video for fear of finding a job because it released personal information about himself. And on December 19th, 2017, he officially retired from all Filthy Frank related content to focus on his music career. But, oh yeah, one more thing. Before he went into his music career, he did say that he would release a book, and he did. It was called Francis of the Filth, and this was to all of his fans, his Filthy Frank fans that were following the lore. And I told you it was all over the place, so this basically tied together all the lore and gave a solid conclusion to it. And then he started his real serious music career under the name Joji. Joji is actually a reference to how George is pronounced in Japanese, which I thought was pretty cool. He released a few songs during his Filthy Frank era on SoundCloud under Joji, but like nothing ever stuck, and not many people, I think, knew that they were the same person. In later interviews, he felt like he was really trapped by the Filthy Frank stuff because he couldn't do much else with it. But after the Pink Guy album did so well, people knew he had real musical talent. And even in the Pink Guy album, if you look at it, he has a song called We Fall Again, and if you listen to it, it doesn't even sound, it's the one song that, it's not even comedy, it's just a serious song, and it's really good, too. And you compare it to some of his Joji songs now, and you can tell that he's had the same inspirations for a minute, and he has his own style. You can tell they're the same person. And so on November 3rd, 2017, he released his In Tongues album, or EP, technically, with 6 different songs that, in my opinion, are all masterpieces. He has a very vibey, experimental kind of sound, and in interviews he's even said that sometimes, because he mixes his own beats too, that he'll make it musky and sound almost staticky, but on purpose to like add to the sound. An example of some of his experimental stuff is World Star Money Interlude, the song. The beat in it is actually from a fight on like World Star. You know World Star. It's like he uses a fight in a background and like turns it into a beat. And it's kind of hard to explain, but it's really interesting. And then my personal favorite is Will He, which is a really good song. And I'm gonna play you a clip of it right now. The lyrics give me cold chills every time I listen to it.
Will your tongue still remember the taste of my lips, my lips, my lips, my lips? Will your shadow remember the swing of my hips, my hips, my hips, my hips? Will your lover caress you the way that I did, I did, I did, I did? Will you notice my charm if he slips up one bit? 'Cause I don't need to know. I just wanna make sure you're okay. I don't need to know. I just wanna make sure you're all safe, all safe, all safe. Will he play you those songs just the way that I did? I did, I did, I did. Will he play you some strong just the way that I did? I did, yeah, yeah, yeah. Will he treat you like shit just the way that I did? I did, I did, I did. 'Cause I don't blame ya.
there's that. That's my favorite song by him. I think it's really good. You should go listen to it all the way through. But eventually, Joji teamed up with Rich Brian at an 88 Rising and released another album. Well, he released another album, and then he's released a bunch of singles along the way and a ton of collaboration music with Rich Brian, 88 Rising, people from 88 Rising, and even more. In conclusion, I freaking love George Miller and Joji and his music and his comedy as Filthy Frank. And I think that all of you should check him out. Thank you.